Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
But what gets me through all of the 11 years that I spent in my career in the fashion industry, working in these offices, were my friends, or the people that I could turn to and say, she's a lunatic. She's driving me fucking crazy. Or I could say, oh my God, I'm so worried about this report. Can you take a look at it? Or the people that I could say, hey, she just asked me to run this report. I've never done it before. Can you show me how to do that? Find coworkers in the space. They don't have to work with you. They don't have to be on your team, but finding peers and coworkers in entrepreneurship is vital. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of The Unfiltered Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Ashley Pollard, and today we are talking about something kind of different. You know, I like to use these episodes as more like, let's say, tip and advice from a strategy perspective, right? I like to use my walk and talks a little bit for that emotional connection. What I want to talk about today stems from a lot of people lately telling me they want to quit their business. And I get it. I mean, I would tell you I'm lying if I told you that I didn't want to shut it down all the time. You could ask my group chat with my entrepreneur friends. I definitely have my moments where I'm like, if I wasn't doing any of this stuff, I would be making so much more money. And I would, I still get job offers for the fashion industry. Last year, I got a job for $250,000 for a brand every single one of you have heard of to run their sales department, trips to Paris, clothing allowance. I could move back to the city, the whole thing. And I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down is because I think I'm going to get more than $275,000 out of my businesses in the long run, where in that business, I'm capped. But it's tempting, isn't it? It's so tempting to go back to a full-time job or to think that entrepreneurship sucks or that entrepreneurship is hard. There's some truth to that. Entrepreneurship is definitely hard. But what I want to show you guys is that work is hard. Hard work is tough. And I want to make some of those connections to you today because I think that there's a humanity level to working really hard that we forget about, especially if you've been an entrepreneur for a long time or if you've only been an entrepreneur. I'm going to shed some light on the fact that what's getting you down is not entrepreneurship. It's just the mental toughness that comes with a full-time focus, a career. So I have these 5 things that I want to show you are typically what I hear. I don't want to call them complaints because I don't want to, I feel like complaints has a negative connotation. Maybe some of the more prominent challenges that I notice come with entrepreneurship. And I want to show you what we think would happen if we went to a full-time job or if we were to work part-time under another person's business. There's so much pressure in entrepreneurship. There's pressure to pay your bills, to pay your contractors. There's pressure to make sales and market appropriately and make sure you're educating yourself. When we say things about entrepreneurship that are negative or challenging, things like, I really don't want this client to let me go, or I'm so nervous, this is a big contract, I'm feeling a lot of pressure. Sometimes we think that if we were to take a different job, that those pressures would be lifted. And to be honest, that's true. To me, a job is something that doesn't really have a ton of pressure, doesn't make a ton of money. Think like an Uber driver, someone who works at Target, maybe you work at a movie theater, all respectable jobs. There's nothing wrong with those jobs. The pressure is completely different than entrepreneurship, though. And I don't want to compare to those because if you're an entrepreneur, you're ambitious. So I want to focus on comparing entrepreneurship to a career. Full-time job in a company where you are trying to elevate through the ranks and contribute in a big way to strategy. So let's dive into what I'm noticing are 5 ways. There's plenty more, but 5 ways that we tend to say that we're challenged in entrepreneurship. And I want to make the connection that we're actually just being challenged by our career in a very standard way. The first thing that I hear often is, I'm really worried that this client's going to let me go. I'm really worried that if I upset this client, they're going to bounce. If I raise my rates, this client's going to drop me. And sometimes the pressure of this client relationship is so strong that we think, I want to shut it down. And I want to remind you that in a career, if you were to switch to a different career, maybe you wanted to work in an IT department in a corporate job and go through the ranks, or a sales position in a corporate industry, or if you wanted to switch into a marketing job or an advertising job elsewhere, you would still be worried about that. Because instead of thinking about it as your client, you would think about it as your boss. And some of us have great clients, and we don't have to worry about them being angry with us if we raise our rates or ask for a raise. We don't have to be worried about if we said the wrong thing to them or if we upset them. Just like in a corporate job or in a career capacity, you're worried about your boss. Is my boss, is the C-suite, is the VP not going to like me? Are they going to want me fired? Did I not do a good enough job to their standards that they're going to fire me? That's a very real thing. And if you haven't worked in corporate, or if you haven't been in corporate for a while, we forget that we have that fear looming sometimes. Am I going to get fired for that? That's a very real fear. The second one I want to point out is this feeling of I want people to like me. I want my clients to like me. I want to have a really strong relationship with them. I want my peers to like me. I want the people who follow me or listen to my podcast or watch my YouTube channel or whatever it is that you're creating. I want them to like me. We all have an inherent one that people like us, whether in a big capacity where we want people to adore us, in a bigger capacity, or on a smaller scale where we want people to like the Instagram reel that we posted. It's very normal. That's a standard feel. And I think sometimes we think this pressure of marketing and of society and the community and of our clients liking us is too much for entrepreneurship. But that's not going to go away. If you were to segue into a career or into some sort of corporate environment, you're going to want people to like you there too. I remember working at places and wondering if, and actually watching people talk about me behind my back. I used to have an office that was all glass. And the team that I was working with did not like me. They did not like me. And they didn't like me because they didn't like the new girl. And then when I wasn't the new girl anymore, they liked me because the next person was the new girl. Obviously a very toxic environment, but it was really, really hard. And I couldn't let them see that. And I had to be super professional, and I couldn't really complain about it to anybody else because it would have seemed like I didn't want them to talk bad about me. It was so awkward. But again, my office was glass. I could see them whispering about me. I could see them whispering and then people looking over at me. It was also not like, if you have a glass wall, there has to be some sort of break in it somewhere. So I could hear them talking about me sometimes. Glass reflects. So I would see them move out of eyesight, quote unquote, from me. And I would see them talking about me in the reflection. It was tough. So that feeling of wanting people to like me isn't just a corporate problem that you may experience. If you work with anyone, you want people to like you. You want to get along with your coworkers. You want to get along with the connections that you have in a corporate career, in another career. That will carry with you. The next one is that we feel so much pressure as entrepreneurs. I need to get everything right and buttoned up, and I can't make a mistake. We see this with Dubsado workflows, or sending an email and it can't have a typo, or making sure that the numbers are right in the analytics that you're presenting, or saying the right thing in a meeting. All of that is so fair. Again, I want to challenge you. Do you really think that's going to go away if you got a job, if you were to go to another industry? I want to remind you that I have so many typos in all of my stuff with my online career, mainly because I truly just don't give a shit about a typo. I'm not going to get struck by lightning if I have a typo. It's not going to affect my business. And if it does, I do not have a strong business. But with those typos, I've sent emails with typos. Do you want to hear a terrible story? One time, I won't name the company, I was working for a brand and we had not sold a ton of a certain product. We sold $29,000 worth of product, and we had estimated that we were going to sell $100,000 worth of product. There was an investor meeting. And when you have an investor meeting, you have to pull so much data, so many Excel spreadsheets, so many pages of research and findings and, all of this stuff. I'm just the Excel queen, so I was always really involved in investor relations in a big way whenever I was in corporate. And so I was sharing the actual figures against the projections. And our actual figures, 29,000, and our projected figures said 100,000. Those are two very different numbers, 29 and 100, And I had a typo and I wrote $92,000 for the actual sales against the projected 100,000. And the founder walked in, shared those numbers, knew immediately they were correct. And there was quite a discussion about how Ashley Pollard got that number wrong. And I will never forget it. But my point is, I definitely heard about that situation and had to work to fix my relationship with the upper management to make sure that they could trust me again. But I didn't lose my job. And that was an example of feeling a ton of pressure. Of course, I felt a ton of pressure. Of course, I want to do everything right. Of course, I want to do the right thing and support. And of course, I want to impress my boss, or in entrepreneurship, my client. Of course, I want my community to think that I run a great business and that I have it all taken care of. But the truth is that pressure in entrepreneurship is going to carry anywhere. You're going to feel that pressure anywhere. To me, the difference is that in entrepreneurship, if I lose a client, I can get a client tomorrow. In business, in a career, in a corporate job, it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to say, oh, well, just find a new job. It's not as easy as that. The next one I want to share is that in entrepreneurship, you have to do so many things that you have never done before. And that might mean learning email marketing. That might mean putting yourself out there on video. That might mean running a team. It could also mean running a discovery call or a sales call or pitching to people. The list goes on. We have to do everything as entrepreneurs. And sometimes I think we think that if we were to go into something safer, we could just do what we've always done. We can be on the machine doing the same thing every day. And there's two things that come up with me there. One, do any of us want to do the exact same thing every day? I mean, granted, we're all different. I would not like that predictability. Maybe you want that predictability. That's super fair. We can differ in that way. But the other thing to think about is that in a corporate job, in a more career-focused manner outside of entrepreneurship careers, you will have to do things you've never done before. You might have to make decisions you've never made before. You definitely have to learn things outside of your realm. When I was in sales, that did not mean that I wasn't required to know marketing. I had to know what production was doing. I had to understand the production schedule. I had to understand manufacturing because it affected everything. There was so many things I had done for the first time. I had to take an Excel test to get the job at Prada. And they wanted me to know what a pivot table, how to use a pivot table, and how to do a VLOOKUP. And in my interview, I told them I knew how to do both of those like the back of my hand, and I had never heard of either of them before. So your girl had to go home and learn how to do a VLOOKUP and use a pivot table in a week before my next interview, which would have had this Excel spreadsheet test in essence. There were so many things that I did for the first time, new, understanding new spaces. So that's something that we share with corporate careers. And then finally, something that I do tend to notice is a very big conversation in entrepreneurship is this idea of overextending yourself. We hear a lot, I took this job so I could work on my terms. I took this job so I could work less, or I tried entrepreneurship to work less. And the thing is, in the long run, you definitely can. After 3 years, I'm working on my terms. This week, I really don't have to work at all if I don't want to. I'm in a rest period. I'm chilling. I don't have any meetings on my calendar. I have nothing required of me. And that feels amazing. That feels truly incredible to know that I have that in my back pocket. But I also know that when you get higher in any corporate career, you do have a little bit more flexibility. You do have a little bit more of an opportunity to say, I'm not going to come in today. I worked all weekend. I was in the office. I know that because I used to do it. I also know that you overextend yourself in a corporate job too. I worked weekends. I took flights on weekends. I had to work events on weekends. I was definitely staying until 8, 9, 10 p.m. sometimes. This overextending yourself is definitely something that happens in any career. Now, why do I point these out to you? Worrying about getting fired from a client or a boss, wanting people to like you, whether it's your community or your coworkers, feeling a lot of pressure, whether that's to run the business correctly or to run a department correctly. doing things you've never done before, whether that's email marketing or something different in a different space, or overextending yourself in entrepreneurship versus overextending yourself in a different career. The big thing I want to call out here is that I think we need to change our verbiage, because when you tell yourself entrepreneurship is hard, it tells your brain something else is easier. And the people in my space are career women. We are ambitious career women who don't want to stop. And I know that because I poll you guys all the fucking time. I poll you when you come into the doers, whether it's the library or the club. I poll you on Instagram. I poll my clients. Everybody says, I am not trying to quit anytime soon. Or maybe it's more like, I do not want to be out of business anytime soon. I'm so grateful I've attracted an audience that isn't trying to say, help me make $100,000 in a year so I can quit. We're all very ambitious people. We are career women here. And if you're a career woman, careers are hard to build. Careers require you to overextend yourself sometimes, to feel a little bit of pressure. And of course, you're going to want people to like you. You're going to worry about getting fired. You're going to worry about doing things you've never done before. But that is not an isolated to entrepreneurship experience. If I were to quit this job today to go work at Balenciaga or Theory or Tacoon or some other major fashion brand, I would feel worried about getting fired, a need to please the people that I work with or that I'm surrounded by. I would feel pressure. I would do things I've never done before, and I would have to overextend myself at times. To me, that action is no different than the actions that I'll take in the entrepreneurship space. There are some nuances and differences, though. I'm not going to act like they're identical things. For instance, overextending yourself because a boss asks you to stay till 8 every day is different than sometimes having to work on a weekend as an entrepreneur. The pressure of, I want to make sure I do a good job tomorrow is different than sometimes the pressure we feel where we're like, I have payroll coming up. Those feelings of, I don't want this client to fire me feels a lot more personal than I don't want the business to fire me because they had a bad year. So how do we find a way to get through that? Therapy. That's the easiest word, because a lot of this is your worthiness tied to it? If I get fired, what does that mean about me? Does that mean I'm a failure? Does that mean I'm not good enough? Does that mean I'm stupid? If people don't like me, does that mean that I'm weird? Does that mean that I'm unworthy of having friends? If I can't take the pressure, does that mean I'm weak? If I can't do things well that I've never done before, does that mean I'm so scared that I can't make moves? And if I have to overextend myself and I don't want to, does that mean I'm lazy? A lot of this is just wrapped up in the worthiness conversations we have with ourselves. And the thing is that all I'm asking is that we stop blaming entrepreneurship and start seeing ourselves as career women, because these are career feelings. And I'm not saying that to minimize. I'm not saying that for like some toxic positivity. I'm trying to relay to you what I'm noticing happening from a couple people that did quit their entrepreneurship journeys and they went into a corporate space. And I had conversations with both of them last week where they said, I actually feel the exact same as I did in my entrepreneurship journey. One regretted quitting her entrepreneurship journey and is trying to quit her job to get back in. And one of them does not regret it. And they're both for different reasons. And they're both very personal reasons. Because I know we all joke, right? We all joke about like, oh, I'm having a burn it all to the ground day. Let them happen. They're going to happen. You have times when you probably want to storm out of a corporate job and quit for good because you hate your boss. It's no different than saying, all my clients are driving me nuts. I want to burn this place to the ground. That's fair. It's fair. But what gets me through all of the 11 years that I spent in my career in the fashion industry, working in these offices, were my friends, or the people that I could turn to and say, she's a lunatic. She's driving me fucking crazy. Or I could say, oh my God, I'm so worried about this report. Can you take a look at it? Or the people that I could say, hey, she just asked me to run this report. I've never done it before. Can you show me how to do that? Find coworkers in the space. They don't have to work with you. They don't have to be on your team, but finding peers and coworkers in entrepreneurship is vital. Obviously, this is time for my shameless plug. It accidentally fell in my lap, and I noticed about 2 minutes ago that this was such a great opening for me to share. But the Doers Club is a great place for those kinds of coworkers. We would love to have you because we share those feelings. Scared of a client dropping us, worried about if someone will like us or not, feeling that immense pressure of entrepreneurship, doing things we've never done before, and the fear of like, does anyone have any tips? Can someone help here? Can someone hop on an audit call? I'll pay you for it. And finally, those feelings of like burnout, really having to overextend yourself at times and having other times that you're really celebrating a win in your business. And I don't say this because a lot of people are trying to quit entrepreneurship. It's not that. It's mainly that I had those two conversations. And I had a separate conversation with someone who said, I think I'm going to go back to corporate because I can't keep worrying about if a client's going to fire me. And it made me really realize that a lot of these feelings we feel in entrepreneurship, we're going to feel in a career. And not because they're the same job, but because we have to do the work to make sure that our worthiness is not wrapped up in what we do, that nothing bad is actually happening to us. We create our sense of safety, and I hope you're doing it outside of your career, and that you're allowed to be new at things. You're allowed to try things for the first time. You're allowed to test things out. You're allowed to risk and make the wrong decision and risk and make the right decision. You're allowed to push yourself a little too hard sometimes and to take a week off if you feel like it. Because when you commit to the long term, burnout does not happen in 2 days, and you can take 2 days off. So all I'm considering and wanting you to consider, I guess really is what I'm trying to say, is think about the long term and think about your business as something you're committing to with excitement. If you're not excited about it, let's work together to find a way that you still get reinvigorated about the idea that the right person is ready to pay you for the right amount of money, because that to me is the biggest win in the book. I'll see you guys on the next episode of The Unfiltered Entrepreneur. And before I go, can you do me a favor? If you are listening to this on Apple, I would love it if you left a review. Now, I keep asking for reviews because I am just aching to see more of them. But we haven't had reviews in about a year, and I would really love to see some fresh reviews. If you are learning from the podcast, if it's making you think, if it's one that you go to, I'd love it if you could open Apple Podcasts, search for the Unfiltered Entrepreneur, and leave a review. Because we have great reviews, I would just like to see more recent ones. I see all of you guys hearting or starring us on Spotify, and that means so much to me, but would love it if you could send me some love via a review on Apple as well. I'll catch you next time on The Unfiltered Entrepreneur. Have a good one.